Hello and welcome to Emergence, Leading from the Field. My name is Artemis Evangelidi and I am your host. This podcast shines a light on courageous leaders from around the world, leaders who are shaping the future in bold and inspiring ways. Moving beyond the boardroom, we feature authentic conversations with guests, the change makers, visionaries, and innovators who are leading from experience, purpose, and heart, from the field where transformation takes place. These are conversations with people who are listening deeply, acting boldly, and are doing their part to shape a more conscious and connected world. Our conversations will offer a rare glimpse into how our guests have overcome challenges while spearheading innovations that have enabled them to lead from the front lines. Be inspired as our guests share their journeys. Today, I am absolutely delighted to welcome Whitney Harvey. Whitney is the founder and principal of the Self-Coached Lawyer, LLC, a coaching and consulting practice dedicated to empowering legal professionals to achieve life-work balance, reconnect with their passion for the law, and thrive in their careers. Whitney is a practicing attorney, educator, and thought leader committed to transforming professional norms in the legal field. With nearly 15 years of experience as a successful litigator, Whitney now balances her legal practice with coaching, teaching, and consulting. Her work is inspired by her observations of systemic challenges in the legal profession that impact well-being, career satisfaction, and diversity. She is driven to create a more inclusive, sustainable, and purpose-driven approach to law and leadership. In addition to her coaching and legal practice, Whitney serves as an adjunct faculty member where she designed and teaches the course Legal Aspects of Diversity in the Workplace in the Department of Management and Entrepreneurship at ASW's W.P. Carey School of Business. This role reflects her passion for educating future leaders on the intersection of law, equity, and organizational culture. Whitney holds a Juris Doctor from the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law at Arizona State University and is pursuing a PhD in general psychology with a focus on industrial and organizational psychology. Recognized as a 40 under 40 honoree and a rising star by super lawyers, she brings a wealth of expertise, innovation, and dedication to every aspect of her work. Well, Whitney, welcome. It is such a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you, Artemis. I'm so excited to be here. And, I just always enjoy conversing with you. So thank you for having me. This is amazing.
Absolute pleasure. So, Whitney, I thought to get us started, I invite you to share a little bit about your journey. I guess what inspired you to enter the legal field originally, and then how that path evolved into founding the Self-Coached Lawyer.
Yeah. So it's like so interesting. And of course, my nose starts itching as soon as it starts. But, my journey really started with my mom. And I'm kind of goofy like that. You'll hear me be goofy throughout. But it started with my mom. I had a single mom. She raised me. And she really wanted me to just have access to just a great life. And she didn't want me to have unnecessary struggles from what she could control. So she really encouraged me to either pursue legal or medicine. And for a while, I was really conflicted. I didn't know which route I wanted to go into. And I ended up meeting one of my best friends in elementary school. Her dad was a traffic court judge. And we took a field trip. The whole class went and saw him in action. And I was just truly inspired by him, the family. Like I got to see their family interactions. And it was kind of that prototype in my mind of this, influential family, this successful family, this loving family. And I aspired for that and chose my career, really based on a lot of those factors. Over time, I've come to realize that I'm naturally an advocate. I've always advocated for myself and others anyway. So what I thought was kind of happen chance really was internal and externally shaped. So that's really how I got into the profession. And I've really embraced more recently the advocacy component, not just, being a lawyer, but going beyond to advocacy as well.
Wonderful. And so how has that moved into this coaching work that you do and the consulting work? I mean, there are many avenues to take in the law. And I think that's always something that people are surprised with, that, we study law, we have a vision of what we want to achieve, and then suddenly we find ourselves doing all these amazing different things. And the law degree really, really leans into that and helps us do that. But in terms of coaching, I'm really curious to hear, what was it that inspired you to make that leap across?
Yeah, the funny thing, and I love being able to go back and reconnect the dots. That's been such a big part of my career navigation, is being able to do that. And
Mm.
I initially thought it was because I just kind of had to navigate challenges on my own. I had some mentors and some support, but ultimately I had to make difficult decisions in my career, whether it was work environment, whether it was how to handle a difficult case or navigate some strain with a client. It still ultimately comes down to you. So that's where the self-coach lawyer comes from, is really you ultimately leading into and deciding from intuition and your informed perspective. And so I thought it was really through my own experience that way. And I've come to realize now that no, I actually saw an example, a positive example of coaching when I was a young associate. I was about 3 years in, and I participated in this group cohort that focused on business development for women attorneys. And there was a woman lawyers coach in there that basically helped us, kind of figure out our unique approach to business development. And so that was kind of my initial encounter with a coach to women lawyers. That was really my only experience. So I went through my career, all of that. But ultimately, I think what happened was I had representation in seeing a women lawyers coach. And I went through my own challenges and growth opportunities. And then I kind of combined that experience with my lived experience and came up with the idea of needing a coach and help support other attorneys in navigating their own personal journeys. Yeah. So
Amazing. I love
thank,
that.
thank you. Yeah, it's kind of, it's really the lived experience. That's really all it
Yeah.
comes down to. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. How has your experience, as a litigator and as an attorney kind of fed into how you support others in the profession? I know that, we regardless of where we are in the world, our profession seems to have the same challenges and the same issues around lawyer well-being and workplace cultures. Um,
Mhm.
and I guess, once we've experienced that in practice, we have that insight as lawyers to be able to support the profession through such challenges. But I'm curious as to your own experiences. Was there something pivotal that happened in your own experience as an attorney that helped you and helps you now support others in the profession?
Yeah, I would say it's been a multi-faceted like set of circumstances that have gotten me to this place of wanting to help. I think my primary experience was coming into the legal profession and not realizing that I was not equipped fully to handle some of the tension and stress that comes with litigation. I didn't know what litigation really entailed. We had mock trial and some moot court competitions in law school, but the actual day-to-day work of it, I had no idea of it. Even as a summer associate, right? You kind of get some glimpses, but you're still shielded and protected. So when I started after law school, that's when I truly started to learn and understand what a litigator had to go through and what that entailed. So a lot of the training that we got in law school on how to lawyer, be critical thinkers, and express our opinions and our argument is great. We need to be able to do that. But what I was missing was, emotional regulation and regulating my nervous system and having some coping strategies for when I was feeling overwhelmed. Um, Recognizing that I had imposter syndrome. I never thought I did for many years. So being able to, navigate communication strategies and tactics and interpersonal relationships, those are things that I was missing from the law school education experience. And that's why a lot of the trainings and workshops I provide now are to fill that gap that many of us did not receive in law school. Legal education is evolving, which is amazing. And they're starting to cover more around emotional intelligence and things like that for law students. But there is, generations of us as lawyers that did not have that training, and we've had to learn on the job. And I think there's still room for growth there, even for those of us that feel tapped into those skills. So that's my hope and my aspiration in doing the coaching and the consulting, is to bring that into law schools, but also to bring it into legal organizations where people might not have received that sort of training.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really happy to hear that it's changing, Whitney, in the US around how our students are being educated on these topics. I have to say, in Australia, we are a bit behind in that space, and there has been conversation around, bringing in these more essential skills at the law degree level to support law students to understand what they're getting themselves into and what they're going to have to face
Yeah.
once they step out of law school and into the real world. But we still have some way to go. And I guess you and I are both on the board of the Mindfulness in Law Society. And I know that, in conversations that we've had previously, what drew us to this work was this ability to impact the field and influence the field in a greater way, to empower people. Um, and I have found that when you have these conversations with lawyers and when you start to raise the topic of, hey, this is how your nervous system works, and this is how your brain works, and this is why you're feeling overwhelmed, stressed, burnt out, and these are some of the things that you can do, it's the first time they're hearing it. And these are basic things. I mean, if you think about it from a medical perspective, these are basic things. We don't even understand how our own bodies work to empower ourselves to be able to do the best that we can. Um, and another thing that comes up often, and I'm curious to get your insight on this, is we all started law school with a vision and a purpose. It's not a profession that you enter lightly. It's something that really most of us were driven into this to achieve something, and then along the way we end up, I guess, like many professions, in the daily kind of rigmarole of the routine and the pressures and the stresses and the output. How have you come across this? I'm sure you've seen it as well, where people are disconnected from their purpose or their passion, and have forgotten why they did it in the first place. Do you find that reconnecting them with this is a game changer?
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because we talk about burnout, we talk about, mental health, mental wellness. But what I found as like the greatest demotivator right now in the profession, and I really think across industries, is this lack of a sense of purpose. People not seeing or being able to make sense of their experience and really where they fit into all of it. You mentioned empowerment, which is just one of my favorite words. It's so essential. I find that anyone that's in a work environment, organizational environment, needs to feel empowered in what they do. It's such a game changer when you go from feeling like you're getting dumped on with assignments or things that you don't feel like doing, and reframing that experience and saying, actually, you're receiving those assignments because you're a rock star. You're great at closing these cases. You're great with clients, client service, client management. That changes a person's experience and trajectory, and it reconnects them in a very simple and easy way to the work. It reconnects them, and energizing them by them knowing that this is why they are here. And you can lose sight of that depending on the area of law you're in. So I've done, personal injury for 15 years. That's not always like perceived as being glamorous, and so, sometimes you're dealing with car accidents and looking at medical records, and you might feel like, okay, what big difference am I making out in the world right now? So it's easy to burn out. But when you can look at it from a different vantage point and say, I'm supporting someone through, one of the worst times in their lives, I'm empowering my clients in a traumatic experience to help them heal physically, mentally, emotionally. that was one way for me to be able to reframe that experience and say, this is essential, what I'm doing as a personal injury attorney. So purpose is so critical to the way that we approach the work and the way that we see ourselves in the overall picture of the legal profession.
Yeah, absolutely. I often say, and I say this to junior lawyers as well when I get them in a room, that I invite you to think of the work that you're doing and to think of your role as the healer, because what you're doing is healing people who are suffering with whatever conflict or problem or issue has arisen in their lives. Like you don't, for the most part, you will go to a lawyer when there's a problem, except for corporate and commercial law, and when you're working on transactions and so forth. But even there, I mean, I was a corporate commercial lawyer for 23 years, but even there, people are suffering because there's
Yeah.
stress, there's unknown, there's uncertainty, there's ambiguity. And I always saw my role, and I invite other lawyers to see their role as the healer. You are healing. You are holding space for people to find a resolution or to recover from a conflict or to find a different way forward after years and years of suffering, perhaps, or in your field, in with injury and with physical pain and suffering, which then impacts on your emotional state. So I love that you said that, and I love that you brought that in, because it truly is what we do. And if we were able to reframe that for the profession, to say, actually, you are in the business of healing. You're
Yes.
in the business of not just holding space for people to resolve issues and problems, but to allow them to walk away whole.
Yes.
That's a massive reframe,
Hmm.
and I find that really amazing. I would love to hear from you, I guess, in your own work, without, of course, disclosing any names or confidential details. But can you share an example of a transformation that you've witnessed in one of your clients, like how your work has enabled them to step forward anew?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love transformation journeys and sharing, stories like that, because I think people think that it has to be this massive overhaul in their lives. And it ends up being that along the way, but it's a process that's digestible, that you're doing at the, micro steps, that when you look up over 90 days or over 6 months, you see how much has changed. So you can do it at a pace that feels comfortable. And so this client of mine, I'm really excited about, part of the work we did was to support her in taking over a role as a managing attorney at her law firm. And she knew that she wanted to be able to delegate. She wanted to be able to have boundaries. But she was modeling kind of the former managing attorney, and being aware that she's a woman stepping into that role. She wanted to go in and be intentional with her style and finding her authentic leadership style in this role, so that she didn't take on everything from the prior managing attorney. Not that she did anything wrong, but she wanted to do it in her own way. And so we started our work. We used hypno breath work, which is one of my modalities. 6 sessions over 3 months was all we did. That's all she committed to. And what started as that focus really ended up shifting, because when you give some space for insights and clarity, what you thought was the priority can change. And what she came out of the experience realizing was that she actually wanted to spend more time at home with her son. And she decided she wanted to pursue a part-time role at her law firm. So during
Mm.
that 90-day experience, she shifted gears and decided that she was going to be a part-time partner there, still in the managing role. They're going to figure it out. But I thought that was a huge win, because that wasn't initially what she wanted, or what she thought of, but it was in alignment with her initial intentions on creating her own path forward in the practice, and something that could be sustainable, recognizing that she had a
Mm.
family and that she needed to be able to sustain that connection as she continued in this new role. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. What a
Thank you.
shift. And
Yeah.
so perhaps our listeners might want to learn more about the hypnobirthing process and what that entails. What is that exactly?
Yes. So hypno breath work, it combines three components. So it's hypnosis, breath work, and then visioning. And the
Mm-hmm.
hypnosis really just comes forward through the breathing pattern. You're taking deep breaths into your belly and into your chest. So that gets you in that theta relaxed state quicker than you might get there if you were just meditating or, resting or something like that. So it's because of that breathing pattern that you're able to get relaxed. The breath work clears out any stagnant or unprocessed emotions or unprocessed energy so that you can enhance your clarity. And then by visioning, what we do is essentially start to reprogram our limiting beliefs. So when we have clarity on what it is, the root of what's blocking us and making a decision, then we can move forward with reframing that experience, getting to the root of what it was, reframing it, and then setting our new goal or our new intention from that place that's not weighed down by fear, doubt, confusion, whatever that limiting belief might be. So you are still setting goals and intentions. You're just doing it from a place of deep clarity, deep focus, and less stress, less anxiety, less tension, which really inhibits a lot of the decision making process.
Absolutely. Well, that's incredible. And do you
Thank
find that lawyers lean into this work?
Oh, yes. I've actually been pleasantly surprised, Artemis, with just the level of interest. So when I was first starting my
Mm.
coaching, I would say, hey, who wants to try, get a discounted coaching session with me? And it was like crickets, right? And then when I said, hey, I'm certified in hypno breath work, it combines like instrumental music. You get to put on an eye mask, lay down and hear me give you affirmations. And people said, oh, yeah, I'll sign up, so they love it. It's something different. It gives people permission to take care of themselves, to engage in self-reflection. And these are 20-minute sessions. These are very short experiences, but it gives people permission to do that at conferences, in work environments, even at home. But I think people feel like they need permission, lawyers especially. They feel like they need permission to engage in that form of self-care. And it's essential. It's essential for our mental health and our brain health, our performance, our ability to think clearly. So when people really find out the benefits, not just for stress relief, but for performance and productivity, time management, etc., then they are really curious about this experience.
Mm.
Yeah.
How wonderful. And
Thank you.
imagine a profession where this was rolled out as a norm.
Yes.
I think that would help us, tackle some of the systemic challenges that we face in the profession. I'm curious also from your perspective, and I know that you teach, the legal aspects of diversity in the workplace. What what are you seeing as I guess, the patterns or the cultural norms that really need to urgently shift within the legal profession?
Sure. So within the legal profession, I think we already talked about the great disconnection from purpose, which is huge. But the more emergent crisis, I would say, is disengagement. So disconnection. Isolation is huge right now. You have people working remote, hybrid, but even in the office, we're not relating with one another. We're not seeing each other at the human level. We're not comfortable with our authenticity. We're not comfortable advocating for our needs when we are going through challenges. So maybe I'm grieving the loss of a parent, or I'm going through a health condition. We're not comfortable advocating for that flexibility that we might need. We might need an accommodation. Like, we're just pretending like that doesn't exist. So we are masking our humanness, our humanity, and wondering why no one has, compassion generally, or why we're suffering from compassion and empathy in the profession. And so it starts with us. If people, I believe people want to help, I believe people want to connect, but we're not creating opportunities for that. And it starts with us by humanizing ourselves in our work experiences. And that can be gradual. It doesn't have to be, sharing all of your personal business, of course, at work. I'm not saying you need to do that. But I think you can be honest as a leader if you're, having finite resources and we're trying to navigate change and we can't do it fast enough and people are burning out and they're growing weary and wondering if you're, staying accountable and transparent with the information. As a leader, you can say, I'm here with you. I understand your frustration. I'm frustrated too, but guess what? We're going to get through this. I'm advocating for you above, and you can express and relate to people. You don't have to act like it's all together and act all buttoned up, right? But you don't have to beat up on the organization either. So I think people connect when they know that they have someone advocating with them in the trenches with them, and that starts with authenticity as a leader.
Absolutely. I love that. And, authentic leadership is one of the core pillars of conscious leadership. And
Yeah.
um, oftentimes people think that conscious leadership is soft, or it's a little bit wishy-washy, or it doesn't, tackle the big issues. In fact, it is the most in your face type of leadership, because you have to have the difficult conversations. You have to address the elephant in the room. And the only way you can do that is if you're standing true to yourself in your authentic power, to be
Yes.
able to lead from a place of kindness and compassion, but, not leaving things to fester, and not letting the weeds overrun the garden. So I think I
Yes.
love that you spoke about that authenticity piece. I think it's so important. Do you find that the younger generation is more in tune with this than perhaps previous generations?
Absolutely. And you know, I say yes and no because I'm really connected on social media, on Instagram. I'm seeing like the upcoming and emerging lawyers on social media. They are blogging and vlogging their experiences from studying for the LSAT to studying for the bar to, their first couple of years as an associate. So I kind of get to peek in through social media and I see that rawness, I see that authenticity, I see them paying it forward. Like they're wanting to develop businesses, side hustles, and coaching and helping future attorneys go through, navigate that on the front end. And then in the office, though, I still see people shrinking, still trying to find their voice, still trying to deal with the construct that we currently have, the current model, even though you have a vision of where you want to see it go. And so I feel like it's a duality to it. I think overall, like the Gen Z attorneys, I think they're definitely advocating for better benefits, better working conditions, of course, flexibility and autonomy. But there has to be some balance with that too, as you're learning as a new lawyer. So I see them being advocates there, but I do find there's more freedom for them on social media than perhaps in more of the structured work environment. And we have to create change within in person as well. It's easy to do it kind of from behind the screen on your private social media page, but we need to do it a little bit louder to really have that representation and to really create that momentum that we need for multiple stakeholders to get involved. It can't just be Artemis, can't just be Whitney and, a few institutions and organizations. It has to be, a massive group of people that feel empowered to really help alleviate the suffering of legal professionals.
Hmm. Absolutely. It's like that, um, the concept of gaining critical mass, right?
Yeah.
Once we have a critical number of professionals in this space who are doing this work, then we can build that momentum, and it creates that ripple effect. I love that you are doing your PhD in industrial and organizational psychology. And I find so many of us have gone back to study psychology, and myself included, because I think it's one of those things that should be compulsory with your law degree, in my own opinion. Not only to be able to understand human behavior, because you're dealing with humans, as we said, who are in, the midst of an emergency, a crisis, a suffering, or a difficult, stressful situation, but also yourself, right? To be able to understand yourself and then how you impact the field and how you are leading from a place of empowerment and awareness. What has been the most interesting thing that's come out in your experience from delving into this area of study?
Yeah. I think what's been interesting to me to see is the momentum. So, 2.5, almost 3 years ago, I started the self-coach lawyer 2.5 years ago. And there wasn't a lot of people talking about these topics of lawyer well-being and legal education reform. And I've met a few people. I heard a couple people on podcasts from the pandemic, but it wasn't so pervasive. And so it was really quiet the first year. It was a little bit isolating to want to be a change maker in this space and know that the people I worked with wanted it. We talked about it. We were at lunch complaining and venting. And then yet when I create this business and I'm like, get me into your organization, no one advocated for that. And so it was a little disheartening, but I realized, people are just watching. They're watching, they're seeing more than you know. And I got that feedback along the way. It was quiet feedback that they might not like the post at first, but in my messages, it was, hey, keep going. We need to see this. So that encouraged me and just really showed the level of fear for some people, and even being able to engage on like LinkedIn with a post that, from my vantage point, is all about positivity and love. It's not about anything negative, but it was raising that awareness, the things we kind of wanted to sweep into the closet or under the rug. And so now I see more people living out loud and doing that on LinkedIn, sharing experiences, encouraging these conversations. There's not as much shame around it. And I've just seen such a difference in 2.5 years where I don't feel like I'm the only coach. I'm meeting other women lawyer coaches, other just attorney coaches. And I'm thinking, this is amazing, because I did not see this 3 years ago. I'm sure it existed, but it just wasn't as pervasive in my world, in my network. And now I'm seeing more and more coaches sprouting up and doing retreats, things that you're doing. I think is amazing. We need more of that. And all it takes is for people to see one or two and they feel empowered and motivated to, hey, I want to venture out. Maybe I want to try that. So I just think it's great to have that representation.
You touched on two things that I love: fear and how we navigate that space, and also disruption. I love the word disrupt, and I say that in a very positive sense. And you Whitney, are a disruptor, and it's when we do that work and we give people permission to not only see that it's okay to do it, but to go, actually, hang on, I want to do this too. That holding space for people by being out there and doing it is amazing. And I echo your experience with, I have the same situation where, and I've learned over the years that people won't like or comment, and yet they're following, and suddenly they're like, all right, I'm ready. Sign me up. What? I didn't even know you were following my work. And that's where the fear comes in. So I'm curious to pick your brain a little bit about fear. We have a lot of conversations around fear, and we challenge our own assumptions, what we're afraid of, and we all sit there with a fear of the unknown, or a fear of challenging the status quo, or even a fear of, oh my gosh, what happens if I do this and it doesn't work out, which oftentimes happens. And guess what, we're still alive and we're still okay, and life still goes on. But how do you navigate this for yourself? How do you tackle fear when it comes up for you?
Such a great question. With fear, I learned from a great business mentor early on that the confidence comes from doing the thing. That you don't feel confident first and then you do it. You feel more empowered and more confident once you do that scary thing. And so I really leaned into that. Probably my first like 6 months in business was, ooh, make the cringy post. Don't go back. Don't look at it. Like, oh, you're going to second guess it. But then, 4 or 5 hours passes or 24 hours. And then I noticed the world didn't stop. No one blocked me. And I said, okay, now I want to push it a little further. And so it's kind of like that is the psychology component that is almost like exposure therapy, where you have a fear of something, you challenge that fear by just putting yourself out there to a degree that you can handle. Then you sit back and assess. And most oftentimes than not, you recognize that it really wasn't so scary after all. And then that increases your capacity to be able to take on more fear, things that you're afraid to do. You're able to break through those barriers faster because you can pull from past evidence. So anytime I'm feeling fearful about something, I do take a pause. I believe in the power of a pause because I'm a quick, impulsive person. Sometimes I can go so fast and I might need to, I start second guessing sometimes if I go too quickly. So if I'm not for sure that it's a yeah or a yes, then I will give it a brief pause. Maybe the brief pause is just 30 minutes. It doesn't have to be that long. But for me, it's taking a breath and sitting back. And then if I come back to it and it's still not a concrete yes, then I know at this point in my journey, it's not really fear-based. It's just a no right now.
Mm.
But if I find myself spiraling and I know I want to do it and I'm just kind of like scared about, well, then I know I need to push myself because I know I want to do it for sure. It's a yes. It's just still a discomfort. So then I know I can push through it, and that I need to do it versus something that's like, I really don't need to do this right now. I'm okay. So it's like a check in and kind of a self dialogue. But first, you have to do those things that feel scary so that you get in tune with what true fear is versus intuition versus I need more information.
What a wonderful way to break that down. And that distinction is so clear. And I think it's going to help our listeners a lot to start to think about these things for themselves. And I loved what you said about how your business mentor said, the confidence comes from the doing, right? Like you have to dip your toe in, and then you can feel confident about moving further. So, what do you find works for you in terms of your own personal practice to help you stay grounded and attuned? I mean, you're doing so many things. Your days must be absolutely jam packed. You're dipping your toe in many different different places, and that's amazing. How do you keep it all together?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for asking. It does feel at this first of all, I have accepted this season of my life. I do not intend to have my life look the way it currently looks in terms of the busyness, because it's not sustainable and you will burn
Mm.
out if you continue at that pace. But I think that sometimes we confuse that with knowing their seasons and cycles, right? So I don't have children, but for like new moms, I've heard, you just kind of understand those first few years or first couple of years. It's a little rough. You're not getting sleep. You're not probably taking the best care of yourself, but there's an expiration to that. Of course, you're going to continue as a mom, but you will have some more stability. And so I've really embraced that as a startup founder, finishing my dissertation. I just know, I have to get these things done in the next year. But my life, I envision it looking so much differently after, where there is going to be space, for less busyness, so to speak, and more intentionality and more alignment and more sharing of thought expertise, and less of that day to day kind of hustle and grind. So that's what I'm aspiring for. So what's keeping me grounded is recognizing this is a season, and keeping my eye on what the future, what I want to create. I'm not creating more of the current. I want to create something different. And then also daily, I have to lead with pouring into myself, filling my own cup because the day will go by. And if you wait to meditate or you wait to reflect until at 9 p.m., you're probably not going to give it your best effort. So when I wake up, as soon as I get out of bed, I don't check my phone anymore. I don't check email. I get up, I might make a cup of tea, and I go outside just in my backyard. I have a pool. I have a beautiful green tree that's like this self-sustaining tree. It wasn't getting water for a while. It kept growing. It's a miracle. And I just walk around. I do laps around, my pool, And I walk into the rocks. We have rocks, not really grass, but I walk not barefoot. I would love to walk barefoot, but I find that oasis in my backyard is my grounding station where I just let my mind go free. I hear the birds, I get the sunlight, I get the tree benefits, at the cellular level, all of these beautiful elements. I have awareness of it. It's intentional. And I use that as like my self-charging station in the morning, first thing. And it's also good for your circadian rhythm and your sleeping, turns out. So that's great. But you have to do it within like the first half hour of waking up. So I get out of bed and go outside. And that's really what's been keeping me grounded, because there's a million things to get done and you might feel overwhelmed. But that starting my day with that intentionality lets me focus on the priority, so that I can get through what I need to get through and I have clarity. And I can also find where I'm resisting, which is that procrastination. That's a mood issue or, emotional regulation issue where I need to figure out, okay, why am I avoiding? But it gives me that clarity by starting my day by focusing on my personal optimization before I get to the business of everybody else.
I love that. What wonderful advice. That's
Thank
absolutely
you.
beautiful. And it's that getting that sunlight and getting out in that first, half hour is critical for not only our body to start working properly. And I was reading an article how being able to go out into the sunlight first thing in the morning actually triggers the production of the various things that your skin needs to be healthy in the sun, and to give you that regulation and that balance that you need. That's just absolutely
Yeah.
beautiful, and I love that the morning practices, I think, are so empowering and so beautiful when you get to bed at a good time and you're able to get up early and you're able to give yourself permission to have that beautiful space before, as you said, the busyness begins, is vital. Um, the theme of this podcast is emergence, right? And it's about stepping into, I guess, new ways of leading, new ways of being, new ways of doing. What's emerging in your own work and your own life right now that excites you?
Yeah. So interesting. Thank you for asking this. I love talking about new things like innovation and getting to more of that authenticity, right? Like I'm not just lawyer, I'm not just lawyer, coach, and consultant. I actually have started doing um, in-person workshops and holistic like wellness classes here in Phoenix, around breath work, meditation, journaling. And I'm bringing that to various community organizations. So beyond the law. And that's where I talk about advocacy, right? Like I'm a lawyer and an advocate for lawyers, but I'm also a community advocate. And so being able to have and bring breath work to communities that are underserved, that might never have the opportunity to go to a retreat in Bali or, somewhere beautiful like that. So really trying to create these mindful and mindfulness workshops and experiences in a yoga studio, locally for people. So that's been something that's really impassioned me, is having an identity beyond being a lawyer and supporting lawyers, recognizing community support as well, community resiliency. And I think that balances it out for me, of course, with my personal life too. But, I'm going to be an advocate to both worlds, but I've been emerging as a community advocate. And I feel like that's been essential for my personal and professional well-being.
That's wonderful. That is amazing. And I will be sharing all of your details, of course, on the podcast description so that people can connect with you and learn more about the amazing work that you do. But as we get to the end of our incredible conversation, if you were to offer one piece of advice to legal professionals or even professionals in other industries who are listening to us, who are feeling burnt out or disconnected from their purpose or their passions, what would it be?
Hmm. Probably, I have a couple. I know I'm supposed to do one, but I would say Start with getting out of your head. So capturing what's in your head, because we have a lot going on up there. And what was essential for me when I look back to maybe 10, 11 years ago when I started this process of self reflection at a deeper level, I was just getting curious and kind of questioning everything like, am I happy here? What's wrong? Why do I feel this way? And it started with journaling. I would just journal. I had no guided prompts. Now they have beautiful journals. I recommend guided journals so you can kind of process some of that if you're not already in therapy. But that's an initial step, is to get your ideas out of your head. You can just brain dump. It doesn't have to be a fancy journal, but just to start making sense of some of your feelings and experiences, I think is essential and critical for you knowing and getting clarity on your next step. Which brings me to my other point: take a first step. Because I was kind of that person having Sunday blues, knowing work was starting the next day. And I was just sitting in my room and it was festering and I was ruminating on it. And I want to go outside and go somewhere, but I don't know where. And I would end up just sitting there, not leaving my house when I was really, not feeling at my best. And so I realized that I could have just gone and chosen one place, right? Maybe I didn't have a good time, but I did something. That's feedback, that's information. Now, the next Sunday, I won't do that. I'll do something else. But when you're just sitting there, never making a decision, and you're stagnant, that enhances the turmoil. It doesn't get you out of the rut because you don't know what's going to help support you personally, your personal well-being toolkit. And so you have to start by getting curious with yourself and just trying one thing, having one conversation, exploring one benefit. Like, there's always one step you can take to try to navigate burnout, try to navigate your well-being if you're going through a challenging time. But you have to be honest with yourself, and then you have to take that step.
Wonderful advice. Whitney, thank you so much for today, for your time, and for sharing your incredible wisdom, your stories, and your passion. Your energy shines through, and it's so refreshing to hear and to see and to sit in your field. So thank you so much for being here and for being so beautifully raw and authentic with us today.
Thank you, Artemis. It's just such an honor. I'm just so glad that our paths have crossed, and I love your energy. So thank you for inviting me into this space. It is sacred. Thank you, and I will come back anytime.
Wonderful. Thank you, Whitney. And I will be sharing all of your details, of course. And please, if you are based in the US or even outside of the US, please reach out to Whitney and learn more about the incredible work that she does. It is a gift to this world, as are you. So thank you and see you soon.
See you soon. Thank you.